In the 18th century, smallpox was one of the most terrifying diseases the world had ever seen. It had been around for thousands of years, sweeping through civilizations, killing millions, and leaving those who survived horribly scarred, blind, or disfigured. No one was safe, rich or poor, young or old. It was a silent killer, claiming emperors and commoners alike. Europe, in particular, was gripped by fear. The disease spread rapidly, and outbreaks were common. The medical knowledge of the time was limited, and most treatments did little to help. People turned to superstition and ineffective remedies, but none could stop the devastation smallpox brought. But in a quiet English village, a keen-eyed doctor was about to change the course of history forever. Edward Jenner was not a famous scientist. He was not a royal physician or a scholar from a grand university. He was simply a country doctor, treating patients in the rural town of Berkeley, England. But he had something that many others lacked, an ability to observe the small details that others ignored. For years, Jenner had heard a strange belief among the milkmaids, the women who milked cows on local farms. These women claimed that if they had once caught cowpox, a mild disease that caused blisters on cows' udders, they would never get smallpox. It was just a piece of rural folklore, dismissed by most as nothing more than an old wives' tale. But Jenner was intrigued. He noticed that milkmaids who had suffered from cowpox did indeed seem to avoid the deadly smallpox outbreaks that ravaged their communities. What if, he wondered, there was a connection? What if exposure to cowpox somehow protected people from smallpox? Science in the 18th century was a risky business. Many discoveries were met with skepticism, even hostility. Jenner knew that proving his theory would require courage, and a test subject. In May 1796, an opportunity presented itself. A local milkmaid named Sarah Nelms had recently contracted cowpox. Jenner took material from one of the sores on her hand and turned to a brave test subject, an 8-year-old boy named James Phipps, the son of Jenner's gardener. With careful precision, Jenner made a few scratches on James's arm and rubbed the cowpox material into the wound. The boy developed a mild fever and a few sores but recovered quickly. Weeks later, Jenner exposed James to smallpox, the disease that had killed millions. The result was astonishing. James did not get sick. The deadly disease simply did not take hold. Jenner had just made one of the greatest discoveries in medical history. He had found a way to prevent smallpox, not by treating it, but by stopping it before it even started. This process, which he called vaccination, from vacca, the Latin word for cow, would become the foundation of modern immunology. One would think that such a groundbreaking discovery would be welcomed with open arms, but Jenner faced enormous resistance. Many in the medical community dismissed his findings as ridiculous. Some mocked the idea of using material from cows to protect humans, spreading rumors that those who received the vaccine would grow cow-like features. Religious leaders denounced it as unnatural, claiming that interfering with disease was against God's will. Others feared that the vaccine was unsafe, believing that it could do more harm than good. Despite the skepticism, Jenner remained determined. He continued his experiments, carefully documenting each case. His work eventually convinced others, and soon, vaccinations began spreading across Europe. By the early 19th century, governments and medical institutions started adopting Jenner's method. Napoleon, the powerful ruler of France, ordered his entire army to be vaccinated, despite being at war with Britain. In 1806, Thomas Jefferson, the third President of the United States, personally thanked Jenner for his work, calling it one of the greatest discoveries in history. Over the next century, smallpox vaccinations became more widespread. As more and more people were immunized, the disease weakened, unable to find new hosts. In 1967, the World Health Organization, WHO, launched a massive global campaign to eradicate smallpox once and for all. It took more than a decade of relentless effort, but in 1980, the WHO declared that smallpox had been completely eradicated, the first and only human disease to ever be wiped out by vaccination. Edward Jenner's discovery had saved millions of lives. Today, vaccines for diseases like polio, measles, and COVID-19 all trace their origins back to his work. Yet, despite his monumental contribution to humanity, Jenner never sought wealth or fame. He simply wanted to help people. Edward Jenner died in 1823, but his legacy lives on in every vaccine that protects us from deadly diseases. His work has saved more lives than any general, king, or emperor in history. And it all started with a humble country doctor, a milkmaid, and a brave little boy.